As soon as you left, Terrence got in.
Hello.
Hello. Let's get started. You want to drive the meeting, or Emily, or should?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'll warn you all a little bit. Having been out of it for a couple of weeks, I'm gonna have some dumb questions about where things are at, but that'll be fun.
I feel like I've been out of it for a month and a half, so I feel like you're doing better than I am.
Yeah. Well, let's all get back into it. Now's the moment. All right. We started the stream. I don't see any new faces. I stuck a agenda item before our standing items because I think as we've been refactoring the governance and the ownership of different parts of the spec, sort of want to change what this meeting is about. Instead of doing like all of the spec reviews here and going over all of the RFCs here. I'm just wondering if you guys were willing to entertain that conversation now, or if you wanted to have it in a different forum.
We had parts of it in the last meeting. I think Natalie brought it up, but we can probably continue.
Do we want to do at least agenda setting for tomorrow before diving into any topic?
Yeah, let's
That's
do
a fair
agenda for
enough.
tomorrow. My suggestion is going to be RFC. Which I have a draft open for, but can clean it up more for public consumption by tomorrow.
Is that like I should read it before tomorrow? Or you expect people to have not read it because it's still in draft?
It is unrealistic to expect anyone to have read anything that's in draft. So I don't expect people to have read it yet. But I would like to get it in a state where it could be undrafted, and I think it would be good to start talking about what's in there tomorrow, regardless of how many people have read it yet, because my suspicion is that we would like to move the other RFCs through the new process at this point, unless someone wants to make a case that there are things that are close to the line that we want to get through the old process.
I was gonna say, I think we've already started the new process in some sense. So the sooner the better, but I also hope there's no problems with starting it prematurely.
I think until we approve the new process, it would be hard to say we approved an RFC under the new process, but I could definitely see us starting to work on them in that way, right? Preparing them with a, shepherd, team lead.
Yeah, I guess the part that I've noticed a little bit more so is through the new governance changes. It does seem like some of the TOC members have stepped back.
Well, that is 100% incident related for me and not by intention of me wanting to step back.
For me, it's like a conference and a serious bout of COVID, but
yeah, so that might just be an assumption of sorts or uncorrelated.
It might be correlated. I can't speak for other people. I think the governance stuff also lagged because of instant stuff for me, at least on my part, of just not being able to approve and move the changes forward faster.
I don't think anyone has interpreted the fact that it's going to change as an invitation to step back in advance of the changes. I think people realize we need to formalize the changes. But there are, one of the reasons we wanted to do these changes is because it's getting hard to get a certain level of engagement in different activities. So.
Sounds good.
RFC,
RCRC sounds good.
Me and anyone else in London won't be there tomorrow.
What's happening to London?
We are celebrating the Jubilee weekend, which is the 70th anniversary of the Queen
What
reigning.
could be more British than that? Tell the Queen I said hi.
Did you
Does
get
the weekend,
anything? Yeah.
does the weekend start on Thursday? Sounds nice.
When the Queen dictates it to.
Must be nice. Yeah.
So yeah, you'll probably not see me or Aiden.
Does that mean you're out for bat as well?
Yeah, I just spoke to Emily about the Friday meeting.
Okay.
Anything else you want to put on the agenda?
I guess Ben's leaving, but I don't know if we need to talk about that.
We could announce it to the working group for anyone who hasn't seen it, but
also, isn't like KubeCon and A CFP's closing soonish?
that's an agenda item for this meeting, right? You're not suggesting we talk about that at the working group tomorrow. Are we done with working group agenda setting is my question.
I think I'm trying to remember where we ended up, but I believe Natalie had brought up the idea of stack removals, and Sam and I had a brief conversation about it. I don't remember if we needed to continue having conversations.
Yeah, we actually talked about it for most of the last working group. Basically just sort of airing the list of uncertainties. And I think where we ended up, there were two parts to it. One was about whether we need to hold Docker files on stack removal. And I think where we ended up was, no, Docker files can proceed, but as an experimental feature. And when we get to the point of wanting to promote it out of that status, we need to have resolved the stack removal question. So we kind of acknowledged that. And then we also talked about the spec, the spreading out of the requirements across different specs, the distribution spec and the platform spec, and what are the problems with that. And I think the general consensus at last week's meeting was, we're not sure what problems exist, and maybe we should ask Emily because it sounds like you have an idea. So if we want to have that conversation tomorrow, that could be good.
Let's do it. And if we run out of time with the RCRC, I think that could be a good office hours topic because it's in the weeds.
Some nice mechanical keyboard right here.
Yep.
Sounds lovely. I really like the sound of a mechanical keyboard. Okay, so the next agenda item here I guess we should send out a doodle to reschedule this meeting because Joe can't make it.
Wasn't Joe supposed to send out a doodle since he couldn't make it?
That seems appropriate. Let's assign it to him.
I'm not volunteering him because he's not here, but I think
You'd be
he,
totally fine if that's what you wanted to do.
but I think he said that he wanted to reschedule it and he would send out a doodle.
I feel like we have a long and robust tradition of assigning things to people who aren't here, and it's fitting punishment.
I mean, you could just sign everything to Stephen at that point.
Well, there's danger there that it just won't get done.
Is renaming it just changing the calendar? Like on community page?
Sorry, I was just looking at the community page. It already is renamed on the community page. So I think it's the calendar. This Google Doc, I'll change the standing items here. I don't know if there's anything else that needs to be done. I think you brought this up, right, Sam? Are you aware of other places we need to rename the meeting?
Zoom, community, team up, Zoom community, team up, the shared doc. Yeah, those are it.
New Repo's done.
I can take care of team up if that wasn't done.
Stock is done.
That's it.
Yeah, it looks like team up still says core sub team sync.
I think it's probably syncing it from Zoom at some point. So like we'll first need to update Zoom, give the ICS to team up, and then update it.
Wait, is that how? I didn't think we got it from Zoom.
But if you click the Zoom link, I think the default settings and everything that populates in Zoom, including the YouTube title, still says Core Team Sync.
Yeah, I think we need to update Zoom and team up, and they're separate probably.
Yeah.
We need to update anything on the YouTube page, or is that handled by updating the Zoom?
It's
I guess
handled by
we'll-
updating the Zoom.
Yeah. Is calendar the same as team up, Emily, here, or do you mean something else?
I was just typing what
Note
people said.
taking.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll admit that I've never really interacted with the calendar, so it was
I think
unclear to me.
I think Javier and I have.
So I will assign Javier the calendar. Who
Yeah.
wants the Zoom?
How do you even update the Zoom
Are we calling it
leads?
leads? Okay.
And then I think the other thing you probably need to update if you're already in there, Javier, would just be getting rid of the sub team for all the other team calendar things if you can.
So just leads sync or leads to sync.
Yeah, team lead sync.
Is there any appetite for creating a word that describes the union of the TOC and the team leads? Like we colloquially use leadership team, but it's not a formal term in our community repo.
I think that might also conflate with the union of maintainers, team leads, and TOC.
I mean, we can just be explicit. I was just wondering if
Like you want to just do TOC plus team lead sync?
I'm okay with calling it team lead sync too. Whatever. I was just asking questions. I guess the backfilling a reason here, maybe one of the reasons I brought it up is because I would like the TOC to continue attending the leads sync. I don't want the name to indicate that people should not come, because I think it would be healthy to have the TOC talking to the leads in that form.
Yeah, I think this came to my head. It was like, maybe we should talk about the agenda first. Like, what does the agenda of this meeting entail? And then derive the name from that. So the biggest change has to do with RFCs, if I'm not mistaken. Is that now RFCs are managed or sort of owned by the team leads. So there's no real reason to need to review them as a collective anymore. I don't know.
I guess I push back on that just because I still want to see RFCs move forward. And as maybe as old school as it is, like forcing us to deal with it once a week, or it doesn't have to be once a week, but on some regular cadence, I think would be good for the project. Doesn't have to be this meeting, but I think that's still a good thing to have somewhere. And I think it will be healthier too, in the sense that probably will only be things that have been already championed versus everything, right? It's like the team leads are the ones that are going to push stuff forward. So it will be the team leads kind of driving, I think, that, like, hopefully the RFC thing will not be me or Emily or whoever. Well, I guess team leads will now potentially run the meeting, but whoever's like actually like running the meeting, going through each and every RFC and checking the status, and more of as stuff is being championed, like to basically kind of maybe move some of that stuff forward a little better. But
what I really don't want is to like go down the list and click on every RFC anymore. What I would like instead is, given that, this group of leads, especially for RFCs that are project level RFCs, is the approving group, even if it's via lazy consensus. I'd like to use this meeting when we're all together to bring people's attention to RFCs that either are getting ready for a vote. So it's like, trying to make sure that there's no danger of it failing. Not that we have to have the conversation about all the mechanics here, but just sort of letting this meeting be a place where we can share out the status of different RFCs in like a high level summary, so that people know when to look and when voting windows are likely to open, so we can have the best chance of everything moving smoothly instead of waiting till the last minute to find disagreement.
I think what I'm afraid of is that we'd fall into a very similar sort of situation where people would still be looking for a mention of an upcoming sort of vote, or having had these conversations, as opposed to, I guess, other ways that I would have seen it is more asynchronous.
I think
Yeah.
synchronous can be a good way to call people's attention to things that are more likely to be relevant sooner rather than later.
I agree with that. I guess my concern is that coming to this meeting to say, hey, this is now starting the voting, process, seems unideal, right? I feel like there should be better ways to do that. Having conversations is probably the most valuable thing. I guess identifying what we should be having conversations about is maybe the challenge.
Like, maybe we could just have each team lead give an update in this meeting. It's like, what's happening on the team, and that could include things like, it could include RFCs that are owned by that team lead at that team lead's discretion when relevant. Like,
how, I guess it's part RFC, but how do RFCs get assigned to team leads? there for sure will be a state where RFC is unowned by a champion person.
Yes.
Late.
There can be an RFC in search of a champion. And this is why I want to dig into the details of the RFC, because I think there's plenty of things people are going to want to nitpick over. What I'm mostly suggesting is that a team lead has to volunteer to take on an RFC. And that it is totally possible that there could be an RFC for which we cannot find a champion. And it doesn't mean it's not a good idea. It just means we're not going to be working on it in the near future and we could pick it up again later. But I think one of the failures of our process in the past is when we're just assigning people, people can have too much on their plate or not as much of a sense of ownership because they just got assigned to it. I want people to sort of be opting in to saying, yes, I'm going to take this to a place where it could get approved.
I guess I would like us to see us. I mean, this is unrelated to, I guess, Javier's thing, so maybe shouldn't talk about, but like, I'd like to see us close more RFCs that we're not actively working on.
Yeah.
As part of that process, or park them or whatever, where closing doesn't have to be this like super negative output, but it's just not capacity. And I feel like we just haven't done that much historically.
I agree with that.
But I guess team lead updates sound pretty good. What do you all think about that?
I would be comfortable with that. And I think there's a little bit of added focus on having team leads be at least aware of what's happening within the arena. So I think that's a net positive.
And that includes basically RFCs that are championing at least some like, yeah, this is moving along, or maybe I need help from so-and-so team if I wasn't able to basically connect async or something. Obviously, like preferring stuff async is good, but I think taking advantage of the fact that people will attend the meeting is also maybe useful too.
I think it could be pretty safe to leave it up to the discretion of the team leads too. It's like, if you don't mention the RFCs until it comes to a vote and then it gets rejected, well, that was a waste of your time and effort, right? You probably want to build some consensus before that.
Yep.
I'm assuming we still want to set the working group agenda. How do we want to handle the spec in this new world?
Is that just part of team lead update stuff? RFCs and specs, if we're like based off of Sam's other PR?
Created a pull request on the spec repository to assign code owners and to remove the current code owners, which is like 3 members of the core team. I need the existing core team to vote that in before it can take place.
I voted.
Yeah, I'm waiting for.
I haven't voted yet. I wanted to talk about platform.
Yeah. Okay. My original PR, I think, I had created based on the team leads that I think you had suggested, which was BAT for bill pack implementation for platform lead for descriptor and distribution for distribution. But we discussed this in the last team lead meeting with the rest of the team leads, and I think we wanted both the stakeholders for each of the spec represented there somehow. So like implementation team lead and the platform team lead on the platform spec, and implementation and build back on the build back spec.
Then for
Yeah.
distribution, is that a platform and distribution conversation? Because I see the dotted lines there as well.
I think the distribution spec is a bit of a weird one, right? Like our distribution team makes the registry, but I don't think that actually ties that much into the distribution spec at times, which is more of like a build pack author and stack author concern frequently.
True.
Distribution feels very cross-cutting, actually, because we also talk about distribution of life cycle and stuff in there too, right?
Mm-hmm. It's, I mean,
Not
the spec
not
itself
in the main version
more-
of it in a branch
Yeah.
where we've been experimenting.
Yeah, the distribution spec V3 is more on sort of defining artifacts. Right. And so yeah, it is a lot more cross-cutting.
I mean, if we don't have, if we want to punt on distribution, we can also just make TOC own that for now and come back to it if you really want.
I would.
But
So currently, what the way I've structured the code owners is, I think in the governance document mentioned that team leads would own all parts of the spec. I think I saw that somewhere. So I'd currently put in a star and just assign anything that falls through the cracks to team leads. So just maintain general maintenance of that repository, and any file that's not assigned to a specific team lead just falls under the purview of all the team leads, and they have to
all sign off.
Yeah.
Or supermajority.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not too high stakes of a decision. I feel like big changes we're making to the spec really should be hashed out during the RFC phase anyways. It should be about making the spec tight and formal and comprehensible.
It also means that we need to make sure that RFCs are not merged if they don't fully spec things out, because I've seen RFCs that have been merged saying that we'll figure it out during the spec PR.
I hate
And
that. Let's not do that ever again. Because it always just means we can't, that it never gets merged, or it takes 3 times as long to implement. Like whatever time we're saving on that RFC approval is spent 3x later.
I think for RFCs that change the platform spec, it sometimes becomes difficult because the platform spec is currently very much driven by the lifecycle implementation, more so than something that's spec'd out beforehand and then the lifecycle implements it. Yeah. So that's the only place where I find it difficult to spec things out beforehand, but we should mandate it that any build pack related changes should be fully spec'd out in the RFC process, because the lifecycle never dictates the build pack spec, it always implements it, but it always dictates the platform spec in some way or the other. I've never seen an RFC where we fully described the platform spec and then the lifecycle ended up implementing it that way.
I think maybe we should use those pressures, force it into the RFC and then use those pressures to try to like clean up the platform spec.
So sorry to interject a little bit, but I'm confused as to where we are in the meeting. Are we still discussing what agenda items we would have for this meeting going forward? Because I like the conversation, but I don't know if we
Sorry, this was a rabbit hole that was like, I dived into without explaining that the motivation for it was to figure out whether anything spec related needed to happen in this meeting.
Right. And did we come to a conclusion yet, or are we trying to solve the spec situation?
I was saying that I think it should come up from maybe team lead updates, but maybe it's just a separate agenda item. And if we don't like it, we can change it.
So like spec release planning.
Yeah.
We don't want to go through the whole like list of PRs, right?
Well, it depends on if we're merging them.
Team lead updates leaves room for people who want to force other people to look at things, to say whatever.
Well,
they want.
I guess to me, it's just like these things aren't painful. Like going through these things aren't painful if they're no ops, right? Like I feel like if we're actually delinquent, that's when it's painful. And that's because that was true on the TOC, right? Like it was painful because we weren't approving stuff and not merging it in. But like if the team leads are doing stuff and it's a non-conversation topic, then it's a non-conversation topic, right?
Yeah.
Like I think it's a
probably largely due to our delinquency, but I do find it painful because it turns what could be one of the few opportunities for this group of people to like talk and strategize about real things into sort of like a rote process where a lot of it is just like, please approve. The person I need to approve isn't even at the meeting. I'll click on the next one and wait 30 seconds for GitHub UI to load, you know.
Yeah. That was supposed to be a sign that it was painful and we should do something different about it. I mean, the inverse of that was spec PRs were just not going to get merged, right? So I feel like it was the less painful of the two, actually, in the long run for the project, even though it wasn't very fun. But I think it's like a bad look if we have PRs that are open for months, right? And they're not moving forward as well. But that's just my thought on that. But I'm happy to roll that just into like spec release planning.
And these are all standing items, right? Like I would hope that we have more fruitful conversations about topics that come, at ad hoc, sort of like right now with the spec, organizational and ownership aspect of things.
Yeah, I think one of the things too that would potentially like to see change is like probably the team lead meeting not be 30 minutes, because I feel like it's just hard to get through all the stuff in 30 minutes and also have meaningful conversations. But I also want the standing items not to drag out. Like that's my fear of extending it.
Could we, because I know we've been doing like half hour this public meeting, and then we typically have the private meeting, but I've heard it said that the private meeting is for anything that we can't discuss publicly, which there's often not anything that we can't discuss publicly. All we're talking about, they're not recurring items, is what I'm saying. And I wonder if we could take care of that stuff in Slack and really call a private meeting when it's absolutely necessary, not have a standing one.
I would love to see that as well, right? I think that forces us to use our public channels even more effectively, and then just schedule those private meetings to have the actual people necessary for those meetings be available as well.
Yeah, I think some of that is just a symptom of getting stuff on like Steven and other people's calendars. At least historically, I may be wrong about that.
But I feel like that even more so maybe drives the need for a more flexible scheduling, because often we'll have the private meeting and he can't come anyway. So I don't know.
I'm not pushing that we should have it. I think that was the symptom of why, like, I think he was trying to clear space on his calendar. Like him and Ben were really booked. But but that's not necessarily a good excuse to keep doing it. I mean, I'm open to trying anything. I mean, I think if we find we want to have it back, we can also have it again, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not like a written in stone thing.
So what does that mean right now as a sort of action item? It seems like we have a consensus here within this group, right? That we would have this meeting and maybe even expand this meeting to be a full hour. Does that fall into this rescheduling thing that Joe has?
Yeah, we should probably get everyone's buy-in on that. We should probably end this meeting that's 10 minutes over and make sure people aren't waiting for us in the other Zoom we could get their buy-in from.
Is that actually true?
That we're over time?
No, that other people are waiting. I feel like
Well, I don't know.
someone would say something in Slack. No.
I don't know. I can imagine Steven just sitting there doing his other work.
I had a few agenda items there anyway. Yeah.
Okay. Happy to
We'll come
call
back
this.
to this.